folks. It's 1 minute to 6. Doing a final sound check here to make sure people are on board. We are pleased to have two presenters tonight in our Session 8 of Local Foods College. First up will be Megan O'Hara. Megan has a MISA research fellow position this year, and she's been focused on really thinking through and helping to navigate the regulatory environment for local foods, and she can tell you a little bit more about that. And then we will have, then after Megan's done, Lisa Weiskopf, who is the produce manager and kitchen manager for Harmony Food Co-op in Bemidji, will tell the story of their kitchen. So you're in for a real treat tonight. And Megan, with that, I think you can just get started here. And I will watch the question box. So.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan, and I have been a fellow this year, and part of my research has focused on commercial kitchens. Other areas that I've looked at regulations have been for farmers markets and mobile food trucks. So commercial kitchens is what we're looking at tonight. And this is a brief overview. I would not call myself or consider myself an expert on commercial kitchens, but I have brought an expert with me by the name of Paul Hahnemann, and he is with Fresh Arc and has built out commercial kitchens for...
Megan?
Yes?
Excuse me, Megan. I can hear you just fine, but I'm seeing some messages that other people can't, so...
Here.
I'm just wondering if Allison has any ideas here. Okay, keep us... Okay, now it says much better, much better. Very good.
Okay, good. All right, well, I will forge ahead. I'm going to be giving you an overview of commercial kitchens and types of commercial kitchens, and you can either interrupt me with questions or wait until the end. One question that a lot of people ask, many communities do have community kitchens in schools and churches, and that's one of the common questions, but they are not necessarily all up to current code requirements to sell to retail or grocery stores. And tonight you'll hear a little bit about the difference between a wholesale commercial kitchen and a retail commercial kitchen. Minnesota Food Code, which governs the retail commercial kitchens, has a variety of requirements around the physical facility, the equipment required, and all of your practices around cleanliness and food handling. And again, that applies to retail commercial kitchens, which I'll be defining for you next. Retail versus wholesale food production. Retail is when you are selling directly to the consumer. And these are commercial kitchens that are catering kitchens and food trucks that sell their foods directly to the consumer. Wholesale is business to business, and this is if you're selling into stores or restaurants or whatever. Farmers or food producers who sell more than 50% of your products to retailers or restaurants are required to carry a wholesale license from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. This, of course, is not including direct sales. Wholesale commercial kitchen is 50% or more wholesale sales to a business. It may be food hubs selling processed products to schools. It could be packaged food products that are going into grocery stores, and many of the products containing meats are going to be regulated by the Department of Agriculture. Sandwiches containing meat products are not under this wholesale rules, but wraps are different. And that's one of those areas where I can't give you all the reasoning behind it. It's one of the quirks of our regulatory system. Wholesale commercial kitchens are inspected by Minnesota Department of Agriculture. They do not do the paper review process like the Department of Health does. They come on site, look at your facility, and see your plans. So they do an in-person review process. And again, this is if you're planning to sell wholesale. They will look at things like your ingredients menu and the materials for floor, wall, and ceiling. They'll look at storage areas and equipment. This is the important thing to remember is to be in consultation with your local officials. There are regional offices for both Department of Health and Department of Agriculture. You can access and find out who the regional authorities are by talking with your local city or county. And another thing that I find is many people consult the Economic Development Authority, and they can also direct you to the proper regulatory authority to ensure that your plans, et cetera, are going to meet the regulations. And some cities have separate licensing requirements. For example, Minneapolis also requires a food distributor license if you're selling into multiple retail accounts. So it's very important to have a local connection and find out any particular rules and ordinances that may affect you at your local level. For retail commercial kitchens, and these are providing food directly to consumers, this comes under the Department of Health, and that does have a plan review process. And that is at the very least a 30-day plan review. And I think they all recommend that you start well in advance of that to give yourself plenty of time. You're going to be consulting both building inspectors and environmental health inspectors. Commercial retail kitchens require NSF equipment, and they also have specified materials for floors, counters, and walls. So again, it's good to be in close consultation with regulatory authorities. Lisa will probably be going into a little more detail on this aspect, but some of the things that licensed commercial kitchens may require, you will need an individual business license for your business. There's going to be a rental agreement, there will be liability insurance, and you will need to have food safety management course, and many would like to also see a business plan. Other specified product requirements, and these are to be for approved sources. Retail commercial kitchens have to use approved sources for their products, and some of these are outlined here. I was asked to touch a little bit on the pickle bill because many people would like a little clarification on what can be home processed and what requires commercial kitchen. And the pickle bill, as many of you know, allows for direct sales. So this would be farmers market sales or direct sales. And the pickle bill itself covers high acid canned foods. There are dollar limits and dollar limits for per product, and I believe per household. Products of the farm, they need to be from your own farm. And again, it covers pickles, salsas, sauerkraut, and canned fruits if it has a low pH under 4.6. The seller also has to have the sign explaining that they are not subject to inspection. The pickle bill does not cover sales of processes that include water bath or pressure cooker. It's only the high acid processing. There are labeling requirements. And let's see, home processors are also recommended to go through Better Process School. I have a link for looking that up if you're interested. For baked goods that you are selling direct is covered under the non-potentially hazardous foods subdivision 10 of the same part of the food code that's, Minnesota statute. So it's another part of the statute covering the pickle bill, but it allows you to sell baked goods directly. So there's the link for Better Processed Schools.
And the other area I wanted to cover is this newer arena of shared commercial kitchens, such as the Harmony kitchen that they have done in Bemidji. In Minneapolis, we have one called Kindred Kitchen. And some of the tips that I have around shared commercial kitchen space is it's often much more cost effective to find in your local community if there is an existing commercial kitchen with some excess capacity. It can save you lots of money, and these spaces can usually set up a pretty cost-effective rental agreement. If you are building a shared commercial kitchen, most people recommend building it to cover both wholesale and retail regulations so that any types of products can operate out of your kitchen. The retail specifications are a little more involved, and in the case of the Kindred Kitchen, they have a variety of renters, from caterers to food trucks. In the city of Minneapolis, for a food truck to operate, they have to be connected to a licensed commercial kitchen space in the city of Minneapolis. So many of our shared spaces are renting to food trucks, and they also have tenants who are packaged and value-added products. The couple pictured here is Passion whole grain bars. Another thing that commercial kitchens offer is education, and I think Lisa may go into a little bit more of that. Other recommended resource in recipe and product development is AURI, and they have been very helpful to many of our local food entrepreneurs. Another requirement of these commercial kitchen spaces is there has to be a full-time certified food manager, fully trained in food safety. And they are responsible for all employee training and the food safety procedures. And that's a 3-year certificate that has to be displayed in your space. So that's covering a number of the aspects of commercial kitchens, and I would be welcome to answer questions now or after Lisa is finished.
Thank you, Megan. If you have a question now, just go ahead and post it into the box. We can just pause for a moment or two and let those come through. I just wanted to bring your attention to a couple of case studies that are posted on the Moodle site about shared kitchens. So just related to that information Megan was just sharing. You can feel free to continue to add questions here as they come to you. But let's go ahead and get Lisa. We'll queue up Lisa Weiskopf, and she can talk a bit about the Harmony Kitchen. Oh, before we do that, let's answer Sheldon's questions. Megan, did you address the question of selling across state lines? I'm not hearing you if you're talking. Be sure to push that talk button again. Okay, Megan, I do see a couple of questions here that are for you, so we'll do that before we go to Lisa. Be sure to turn your mic back on with the talk button. Sheldon asks if you have any information about sharing.
Turned on.
Yep, keep talking.
About across state lines.
Yes.
I believe across state lines would follow the same rules that exist for either whether you're selling direct to consumer or to retail. And again, you would be consulting with Minnesota Department of Agriculture and or Minnesota Department of Health to ask them for those kinds of questions. As far as sharing commercial kitchen space within a food shelf, I think if it met all the guidelines and had a full-time certified food manager on site, it would follow the same rules as the others. So it would, I believe, follow the wholesale or the retail rules. I don't know if you're talking about supplying processed products into the food shelf. I believe that would be considered direct to the public, so it would fall under retail guidelines. And then I see one more question about if we rented extra time in our retail kitchen, would a certified food safety manager have to be on site? I believe it is full time. It is for all times that it's in operation. I believe with restaurants, they have a person in charge stipulation, then the person, it's called a PIC, and that person is expected to be knowledgeable on food safety procedures. So I believe it would be either the full-time food safety manager or the person in charge.
And I think this is a question that Lisa can address too, as she tells about the experience at Harmony. So thanks for those questions. And let's move now to Lisa.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Megan.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. So I will just give a brief kind of history of how we started our kitchen here at Harmony. And then if you guys have any questions regarding details, feel free to ask. And then, yes, Linda can, do that. So you guys can look at pictures while we're talking. And also, Linda has uploaded the community use policy manual for our kitchen, as well as the entrepreneurial use kitchen manual. So I'll kind of go into those two. So as Linda said, I've been doing produce here at Harmony Foods for 19 years, and that's kind of one of the reasons we got started looking at the local food movement, which wasn't really a movement 19 years ago, but of course it existed because we've all, grown our food. But farmers used to come to the back door at the co-op and want to sell their stuff to us, and we really didn't know what the regulations were, and a lot of times our market wasn't big enough to be able to sell all of the produce that was being brought to our doors, so we were kind of wanting to provide other avenues for these farmers. So that kind of, stirred us in thinking about how can we participate in kind of a local food infrastructure. And then in 2007, a local nonprofit, it's an environmental and justice organization, approached the co-op, me in particular, with a question, more like with a article, and the article was entitled "The Poor Get Rich," the poor get diabetes, the rich get organic and go local. And it was kind of an interesting way to start the conversation on food access, but it was effective. It was really like, that's kind of what we're thinking about too. How can we ensure that the region, has equal access to good and healthy food? So kind of that conversation got us into writing a grant, kind of a research grant, which the Indigenous Environmental Network got, and that grant allowed us to do some mapping of our region and some geocoding of things. So in other words, we kind of looked at what kind of assets do we have in the community, who's growing what, where, and also what kind of food distribution programs do we have in the area, what kind of, nutrition programs, commodity programs, etc. So what are the vehicles of distributing food in our region? And then we also looked at what are the barriers that we have in our region to the distribution of healthy local foods. And so with that, we kind of located, we took the 3 reservations, the Indian reservations in northern Minnesota, White Earth, Leech Lake, and Red Lake, and we kind of drew a circle around them, and we included all the counties within them. and we said, okay, we're gonna term this the Headwaters Food Shed region, and basically look at that in terms of what the assets, barriers, and opportunities are. We did that 2008, and then in 2009, 2010, we founded Harmony in kind of collaboration with IEN, the Indigenous Environmental Network, founded the Headwaters Food Sovereignty Council to kind of look at the research that had been generated about the area, and get a table full of people that are working within local food programs or even nutrition programs around the same table, so we can talk about how we can, what we need and how we can effectively create that in our community. And that's where the idea of a community kitchen, a commercial kitchen, first started, was, kind of generated in those conversations. As many of you know, rural areas don't really have much infrastructure as far as like processing, as the, most of those kinds of things are concentrated in urban areas. So that was one of the things that Harmony, looked at as being where we could really participate. So what Harmony did then, in between 2008 and 2010, we knew that we were going to expand to a bigger location. Prior to this, we had been in a kind of a small closet sort of co-op. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with those. So we knew that we had to expand. And so we kind of thought, well, we know that when we're going to move into our bigger location, we're going to have a cooking classroom, or a classroom kitchen, basically, is what we call it, because we had always taught education classes, nutrition education, cooking classes in our small space, and it was, it virtually amounted to 10 people standing around a little kitchen stove in our deli. So we really wanted to expand our educational component. And so what we did was we did some surveys to the members. We held membership meetings and had focus groups with the member owners and with the board of directors here at Harmony to discuss how we want to focus our energy. And by and large, the membership and the board really felt that a commercial kitchen was the way to go. So that's kind of where it really started rolling. And at that point, the Northwest Sustainable Development Partnerships helped. They gave us a little research money so we could kind of, figure out how exactly this was going to look like. We researched models. We actually used the Kindred Kitchen as a really good model on how to encourage both kind of entrepreneurial endeavors as well as to match that with an educational component. So we got a kitchen committee together, not just of co-op members, but of large, people from the community. We got people from Indian Health Service, from the Regional Development Commission, a local folk school called the Rail River Folk School. We even got a Charge North involved, as well as a local soup maker. So we had kind of a wide swath of people sitting around this table discussing, what does the policy manual look like? What are the hours of operation? What do we need, in terms of regulations to make this happen? And we used a lot of existing resources, which are available on the web. You just Google, commercial kitchens, and there's a lot of really great resources out there. So we pulled from that and then modified the kind of operation to our own specific location. And you can see, I think you can see that there's the community use manual, policy manual, as well as the other one. If you want specifics on kind of what we came to in terms of our, curriculum and how we were going to run it. We also had the Department of Ag, I guess, representative in our region, Russ Kunkel, sit in on some of those meetings. And so he was really helpful to kind of talk us through, various questions we had, because really there's a million things to do when you're planning a commercial kitchen. And then in 2012, we opened the commercial kitchen, and lo and behold, we had our first anchor tenant, which was the Bemidji Brewing Company, which was very odd. It was the first time actually in the nation that a local microbrewery was using a community kitchen to make brew. And so that kind of brought in a whole other aspect of regulations, because we had to deal with federal regulations at that point. Even the ATF was involved because of the alcohol portion. But they had a really successful go at it. The Bemidji Brewers are kind of our flagship group, because they grew out of the kitchen in a year, and now they have their own retail space. So now we have our own little microbrewery downtown, and they started in our kitchen. So we really were successful at taking a unformed business and really turning it into something that now has its own retail space. So where we're at now, I think if you read one of the case studies, the case study on Harmony, you'll see that it was kind of a bittersweet thing when we lost the Brewers as our anchor tenant, because, we have to start looking for other people to sort of hold that spot. So that's kind of what we're focused on now, is running education programs. Two of us here at Harmony have gotten our ServSafe kitchen management license, and we can both proctor and teach the class as well. So in 2014-15, we're going to be doing the ServSafe courses in the kitchen, and as well as, and we did that the first year we were open as well in 2012. As we opened with our first year, we ran kind of a gamut of courses on how to turn your product into a value-added product. And so that's what we're going to be in 2014-15. But in the meantime, so I guess I should back up and say there's two components of the community kitchen. Like you can see here, there's the community user aspect and then the entrepreneurial aspect. And so what we wanted to do with that is we realized in northern Minnesota that we're probably not going to make our bread and butter off entrepreneurs at this point. And because the co-op has such a strong history of education, we really thought, well, it's the perfect setting for community education around nutrition. And so we really have a lot of nonprofits, people in the nutrition field. We have Sanford Medical Center up here. They use the kitchen a lot to do focus groups around healthy eating. So that's really what the kitchen is used for now. But we're really looking to expand into the entrepreneurial realm in the next year. So with that, that's pretty much the history of how we got going. But if anybody has any specific questions, I'm full of answers. What is the hourly cost? So you can see in the manual, in the two manuals, for community use, it's $15 an hour unless you're a member owner, which means basically that you've invested in this. Our member owners invested the $75,000 that took to build the kitchen. So if you're a member owner, it'll be $12.50 an hour. And then for entrepreneurs using the kitchen for retail products. It starts at $18 an hour and then goes down to $15 if you're a member owner.
I was going to add
Lisa,
in
do you want
Minneapolis.
to go ahead?
Go ahead. In Minneapolis, I was just going to say Kindred Kitchen started out at $30 an hour and did have to bring it down to $20 an hour because you have to make it affordable for the very small food entrepreneurs. Yeah,
and that's a good point. I think we're going to be doing an assessment on that ourselves because, and we've made arrangements with others using the kitchen to kind of do a monthly fee as well. And I think, I kind of think that's the way to be is flexible, to really know what the community needs and to try to meet it where you can. And the co-op is lucky in that case because we have a huge retail market to basically keep our doors open. And this kitchen is like I said, kind of a value-added endeavor. We use it in-house a lot for education. The community uses it a lot for education. And so, the entrepreneurial side of things, we have a lot of flexibility with, if that makes any sense.
Lisa, I wonder if you can go back to, let's see, was it Amy's? No, it was Barb's question from the Farmer Market Cafe about, so if you have an entrepreneur using it, or if you have a community member using it, how do you cover that certified food safety manager?
Right. So if we have an entrepreneur using it for retail sale, they have to have a certified food manager's license. So you can see, yes, in that bulleted thing there. So if you're going to be doing something for retail, you're going to have a food manager's license. The way to get around that would be to make it in a kitchen, which there is a food safety manager there while you're renting. So yes, I believe that is the case.
And how does that work for community members?
So for community members, a lot of times community members will use the kitchen to do a cooking class. So they're not taking the food off site and they're not selling it on a retail market, so that they aren't required to have a food manager's license.
Okay.
And they're basically covered by our food manager, which is me.
Right. Go ahead and type in your questions, but I'll just, I know earlier when we were talking, you kind of walked through if I'm an entrepreneur and I say, I need to start using your kitchen and the product I want to make is spaghetti sauce.
Mm-hmm. What's
just sort of walk us through it.
Okay. So somebody comes in, wants to make spaghetti sauce. The first thing that I would tell them to do is to contact the Department of Ag Inspector Russ Kunkel, because he has to see the recipe first to know where all the ingredients are sourced from. And then he will meet with that spaghetti sauce maker in the kitchen, and they will kind of walk Russ through the process of how they're going to make it. And then he will either okay it or not, but of course, let's just say he'll okay it. At that point, they apply for a business license with the city of Bemidji to distribute. And if they, I guess I would ask if they have a food management license, assuming that if they're going to make spaghetti sauce, they do, then, that would be great. If they don't have a food management license, we would direct them to an online course through SurfSafe, where you can get it in, 8 hours. And once that is in place, they would need to get a certificate of insurance, liability insurance for their product. And then we would work with them on their business plan. Because we like to know that, well, I guess we like to sort of be a filter so that we make sure that folks know exactly what they need to do in order to make this a possible product.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Megan, you were going to ask something a little while ago or add something a little while ago. Do you want to tune back in and do that?
Sure. I was just going to say that with Kindred Kitchen, I know they have a $100 a month minimum. So given if you have fairly low hourly rate like that, you do need to try to ensure that you're covering your costs. And for them, that meant having all of their renters have at least $100 a month minimum, but that goes toward your rental fee. So they're kind of ensuring that you're spending at least a few hours a month at their kitchen to be among their renters.
I see.
Yeah, that'd be another way to ensure. Is Kindred Kitchen, I don't remember, is that sort of the only enterprise there? You know, like Harmony has got the retail plus the kitchen.
Right. Kindred Kitchen is a shared kitchen space. It has an adjacent space that was planned to be for a restaurant or something, but that hasn't rented out to date. So it's got 2 full kitchens and then a prep kitchen and then a freezer and various cold and dry storage areas. So yeah, it's just the shared kitchen space. We also have Kitchen in a Market, which is a private enterprise operating out of the Midtown Global Market. And that primarily rents to caterers and food trucks, but they do a full range of community cooking classes. And there are a number of others as well. Paul Hahnemann has built another recent shared commercial kitchen space called Food Crafters Kitchen.
Good. Lisa, I'm going to put the pictures back up and just invite you to say a little bit about the Commissioner of Health's visit to the kitchen.
Okay. And maybe you know the context for his visit yourself. There he is.
Okay, let's see here. So I think the Commissioner of Health was just doing kind of a series of listening sessions around the state. Okay. And so Wendy Cavalli, who works for the Department of Health in Bemidji, was in charge of organizing the day when he came to Bemidji. And she sort of helped propose this, yeah.
So we hired these local caterers, and they made, honestly, the most exquisite meal for him. But it was really cool. We had a lot of nutrition educators there. We really had a full room. There's Jessica from the Rail River Folk School and Diana from the Indian Health Service. So it was really great to break bread together and talk about, local foods access while in this shared space. And then we have, actually right next door to our kitchen is the community radio station, KBXE, which has a local foods program. And they like to feature some of the stuff that we're doing as well. So that's kind of a really good collaboration. Mm-hmm. And, I was going to say, when we were talking about the Kindred Kitchen, Simone from the Indigenous Environmental Network, and I went to Kindred Kitchen to visit, and they gave us a great tour and kind of showed us, the classes that they were doing and et cetera. And at that point, they had decided that having a full-time kitchen manager, there constantly was not economically feasible. And so they developed a kind of a user arrival departure program where they have a clipboard with all of the things that you should see upon arrival. You should see that the stove is off. You should see that the doors are locked, that the appliances are washed and put away, etc. And then a departure checklist, which is basically the same thing. So upon arrival, the user will note that everything is okay, and then when they leave, they'll note that everything is okay. That way, there's kind of this system where if something isn't okay, we'll know that the previous person maybe left the pans out, et cetera, et cetera. But it really helps. It helps encourage people to be accountable to their kitchen because it's a community kitchen, and it really helped us cut down on labor costs for that, which allows us to offer good prices.
Right. I just wanted to add about Kindred Kitchen. They did wind up not having a separate food safety manager, and the kitchen is managed by the tenants that I showed you, the Passion Bar producers, Paul and Wendy Sorquist. So they are like renter managers for that space.
That's an interesting model.
And it's funny, I mean, when you were talking about all of the freezer space and dry storage space that Kindred Kitchen has, again, it is really about being flexible to what people need, because we don't have that space in our commercial kitchen, but we do have it in our store. So the brewers, for instance, kept a lot of their equipment back in our produce cooler, and then we're working with an ice cream maker in the future, and he will be renting out our freezer space, that's not in the kitchen, but it's in our store area. So it's kind of funny how we all sort of have to sway with things in order to make them work.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and I was learning that they at times run very short on refrigerated space, etc. So it can be difficult management process to kind of have multiple tenants with similar storage needs. So you have to balance out the types of tenants that you are serving. And at times you have to find that you have to add equipment in to accommodate everyone.
See, earlier on, someone mentioned that they were thinking about constructing a commercial kitchen at their farm. Let's see, it looks like Sheldon was the one that was thinking about that. Sheldon, do you want to chat in any more about your project and maybe the products that you're considering? I should just also ask Barb. Barb is at the Farmers Market Cafe in Onamia. Barb, do you have a microphone available? If you do, I could just have you say a little bit about your space there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. The Farm Market Cafe is a retail kitchen that we took over. We're renting it from someone else right now. It was originally intended to do things like pizzas and fast food. So right now we're at capacity because we need to process, of course, all of the fresh produce we take in from the local farmers, and we use pretty much exclusively local produce to do that. We specialize in soups and sandwiches, and we use organic grains and flours for our own homemade breads and that kind of thing. Early on, during the feasibility study stage, we had talked about renting out our kitchen. Unfortunately, as we've gotten into this, the small space that we have and limited cold storage probably wouldn't lend itself well to doing something like that. Nevertheless, it's still in the back of our mind.
You. And that's such an interesting point about the equipment that's needed for. Oh, you need to shut your microphone off, Barbara. I think that'll be better. Thank you for telling a little bit about that. Let's see, Paul mentions that he's helped a farmer get a value-added grant from the Department of Ag. Maybe we can get Paul mic'd up to talk a little bit about that. Sheldon says they're thinking about mixed greens, syrups, and baked goods, and they will exceed the $5,000 limit that's allowed under the, what is that, the non-potentially hazardous food code.
I just go ahead and speak?
There we go, Paul. Thanks.
Great. This is actually this is not Megan. I'm on her mic, but the cost is pretty hard to peg down. I mean, it's going to vary a lot. So I don't know if I can really accurately answer what the cost will be. I think that, yeah, I can tell you kind of what their major costs will be, as in what elements. At least in terms of a basic kitchen. And so again, it all depends on what you're going to build and what you're going to process. So you'd want to start with reviewing what you're going to process and kind of going from there. But typically, for example, if you have a range, you'll need a commercial hood, and you'll need makeup air for that hood. You will need a 3-compartment sink for cleanup, a 2-compartment sink or a processing sink, like a produce sink for any handling of vegetables. And that doesn't happen. That's not allowed to happen in the 3-compartment sink. That has to be in a separate sink. And then, of course, you'll need a hand sink, and you'll need processing tables. And if you're processing maple syrup, you're probably going to have some specialized equipment for that. I can just imagine what you're going to have for that. Some pretty heavy-duty cooking equipment, so that's going to be pretty specialized. So I don't know if that really answers your question very well. Yeah, I would probably plan somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 a square foot or so, but that's a really broad number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for the co-op, it was about $75,000 to build that space, with the hood, obviously. Oh, that big. I'm spatially sort of inept, so. But it reasonably. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to guess that. This is Linda. I was just going to guess that the length of the, sort of where the equipment is lined up, and then the sink space is, that must be about a 20-foot wall, and then another 10-foot wall.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. Maybe 30 feet long.
Yeah, so maybe you're 30 by 20 or so.
Mm-hmm.
So then you would be if you were $100 a square foot, you'd be 60,000, right? Because you'd be 600 square feet.
Yeah.
So yeah, but maybe my number isn't too far off. But
Mm-hmm.
It really depends on what equipment you buy.
Yes,
it
does.
You guys have a really nice looking kitchen. I'm impressed. It also looks really clean, which is really nice.
Yay, that's great to hear. Yeah, the hood
Yes.
obviously was the most expensive thing, but again, with equipment, it's true. We brought in that, you can see right there, it's a electric steam kettle, and we brought that in just for one caterer, and he said, well, I'm not going to use the kitchen without it. So, you know, we thought, we kind of made a short list of must-haves, and started from there.
Paul, you mentioned earlier about helping someone get a grant from the Department of Ag. I'm thinking Minnesota Department of Ag. Maybe you could just say a little bit more about that.
Sure, I would be happy to. We helped a farm in Starbuck, Prairie Horizons Farm, do a business plan for, I mean, they're kind of continually changing their farm. It was for 5 generations a dairy farm, and some years back they switched to a grass-fed beef, and they've recently been in the process of adding a lot of fruits and vegetables, and yet they still have all this space that was dairy space. So we helped them develop a plan. You know, it was a business plan, but included in the business plan was some physical drawings, plans, as what I would, as an architect, call a plan, a drawing. So that was part of the business plan, and we included in that a commercial kitchen, as well as basically kind of a pack shed space for initial processing of vegetables that would come in. So the value-added grant, I'm not so sure that would help you to build a kitchen. I would say probably not, but it could help you with designing a kitchen if it was part of a farmer's business plan. So yeah, the value-added grant from the Department of Ag covers business plans as well as equipment purchases for farmers. Those are the 2 things you'd have to be. You'd be a farmer, and you'd have to be doing one of those 2 things: you buying a piece of equipment or putting together a plan.
Great, thanks. Let's see, Susan also has a question. Go ahead.
Can I just add that I think also that would apply, of course, to someone who's harvesting maple syrup, like Sheldon mentioned earlier.
The planning or so food, whether it comes from a planted crop or a native crop, huh?
Right,
perennial or
yeah.
annual.
So the definition of a farm is a little bit broader in this category.
Yeah. And Paul, maybe you have more to add to Susan Andre's question. Lisa chatted in an answer. If you're setting up a commercial kitchen, does it matter if your equipment is new or used? And then Lisa answered that as long as it's NSF certified, maybe someone can spell out what NSF stands for us here.
You would think I would know that. It's National Sanitation Foundation, I think. And that applies to retail. So if you're selling direct to retail, generally speaking, all of your equipment has to be NSF certified. That's not always the case for wholesale. Yeah, was that what I said? I think I got close. Yeah, so in wholesale, you have to meet the USDA wholesale standards for production, which are different than the retail standards. And they don't necessarily require NSF because often wholesale food production uses customized equipment that just never is tested for for NSF standards. But it's still going to have to be, washable and cleanable and all that. But almost
Great.
any piece of equipment that you buy that's a standard piece of equipment, such as the sinks that I mentioned earlier, those are almost all going to be NSF. Stainless steel tables will likewise almost always be NSF. Yeah, I would say the biggest hang-up that we find that people run into with kitchen design is actually in the finishes. So all of your finishes need to be washable and cleanable, and the floor requirement is different for wholesale than it is for retail, and that's one that things sometimes get hung up on. The retail floor design is like for wholesale. You could have a sealed concrete floor and probably be fine in a wholesale facility. Don't quote me on that, but I mean, you really want to talk to your state health department about, your inspector about that. But for retail, you would need to have a washable, cleanable floor that's typically their quarry tile, which looks like that's what you guys have got up at Harmony.
Yeah.
Or in some cases, their epoxy floor. And either one of those is fine. And the epoxy has to be of a certain thickness. And in some places, they'll get particular about the level of grit that's in the flooring as well. Because if you put too much grit in it, it's harder to clean. But if you don't put enough in it, people will slip and fall.
Good. So the Department of Health is really interested in the facility, and the Department of Agriculture is interested in the products. Is that a sort of a simple way to differentiate between those two organizations? I know there's lots of exceptions and sort of gray area, but
actually, I would say that if it's wholesale, well, and maybe my perspective is as a building designer. So for wholesale, it's reviewed by the Department of Ag. And for retail, it's reviewed by the Department of Health. So regardless of what your products are, it's the wholesale retail difference that points you to either the Ag Department or the Health Department.
thank you for that clarification. Are there any other questions that folks out there have, or comments that you'd like to add to the chat?
This is Lisa again. I was going to say to Chris from the Staples Farmers Market, and to any of you, if you need assistance or want to kind of follow the paper trail of how we put our kitchen together, I share widely and freely. And I'm also very willing to take calls and emails. So my contact information is posted. Well, Linda, did you post it somewhere? Or it's definitely in the policy manual. So you can contact me that way.
Manual, and you can find that posted to the Moodle Classroom site. I'll put the link for that. I can also add your contact information right by your picture, so it's handy for people to find. But if you're looking for it right now, you can head to that Moodle site and open up the manual, and you'll find Lisa's email there. Well, I just want to say thank you to Megan and to Lisa, and thank you, Paul, for joining as a special guest. Thanks all of you participants in the Local Foods College. We've had this is the 8th in the series of 8 now, so the materials that are posted on the Moodle site will stay there until next fall sometime, when we start thinking about revamping the class for next winter. So all the recorded sessions from this year and from previous years are on that site, and a lot of links to websites and links to materials